Live from Atlanta, Georgia, it's the Zach Ballinger Show, where we help you find your direction through passion and purpose. My name is Zach Ballinger. I'm your host. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Two ways you can engage the show. Always email me, Zach at ZachBallinger.com. We'll make sure to answer any questions you have for our guests. We are streaming live via YouTube. So if you have any questions, pop them into the comment box. We'll make sure to get to them. Without further ado, Dr. Boman, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach. It's a pleasure to be on here.
So you'll be another episode to our career library. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about your career?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm a chiropractor. Specifically, I do pediatric, special needs, prenatal, and family wellness chiropractic. I did my bachelor's degree, and then did my chiropractic degree, and then did another 400 hours of postgraduate work to get my diplomat in chiropractic pediatrics and pregnancy.
So I didn't even know this until I started reading your background that there's actually different chiropractors. I didn't even realize there's ones that specialize in peds. Is there different training for that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of chiropractors that aren't trained in it kind of think it's just a little spine, do the same thing that you would do on an adult spine. But there's a lot of nuances that you need to know and that you gain not only from experience, but also learning from other people's experience. I've seen hundreds and thousands of kids. I've adjusted my own kids. I have three, at 30 minutes old, 15 minutes old, 5 minutes old, I've adjusted patients. Kids not quite that early, but within hours or days of them being born. And obviously, the techniques that we're doing on little babies are very different than the techniques that we're doing on even a 1-year-old or 5-year-old, let alone an adult or an elderly person. So the techniques vary a lot, the intention varies a lot, the frequency varies a lot. The locations vary a lot. Everything changes when it's a kid because they're not really, you're not working with bones really as much as you're working with movement of cartilage, because their joints aren't fused. They don't move like ours do. You're not going to get like, if an adult has a sore neck, maybe they can turn this far one way and this far the other way. A baby, even if it has a stiff neck, it's still going to get pretty decent range of motion. So there's different things that you're feeling with the tips of your fingers. So yeah, it's very different seeing, especially babies and special needs kids, because some of these kids too have severe brain injuries, so they have shunts running through, which means that you're not going to be doing any big adjustments, with the neck. Some of them have fusions or plates or metal in the neck, and most people would think that they're not a candidate for chiropractic care anymore because they have hardware in their neck or different parts of their skull, or has had surgeries or shunts. But the reality is that the goal of chiropractic is much more than just getting joints moving for the sake of pain release. And I'm sure we're going to get into that a little bit more, as I talk about how I practice chiropractic, and especially how it relates to kids, pregnant ladies, and special needs.
What made you want to be a chiropractor?
Yeah. So I've always been, for some reason, a really driven kid, always thinking one step ahead. I wanted to be a professional athlete when I was in high school. I thought I had the chops for it, coming from a small private Christian school as a wide receiver. Moving into a big public school, I realized I was a very small fish in a big pond. Wasn't going to realize that NFL dream no matter how hard I worked. And so I started kind of figuring out a plan B. I'd always gone to a chiropractor. It helped my sister with some chronic health issues that she was experiencing. And we had a kind of senior project, research somebody in the field, and report back. And so I researched my chiropractor and decided then that that's what I wanted to do. And my goal is to be a chiropractor for professional sports teams. Particularly, I like the Raiders. And so my 15-year-old dream was to travel with the Raiders everywhere and adjust the team and live that life. It wasn't until my second year in chiropractic school, I was at a seminar in San Diego, where one of my mentors now was kind of re-pioneering chiropractic for kids, and especially kids with neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism, ADD, ADHD, seizures, brain damage, cerebral palsy, all of that stuff. And he said something from stage that what forever changed me and continues to affect me every time I say it. He says, I can't imagine how frightening it must be for kids to be locked out of a world that they want to be a part of. whether it's talking about kids with autism that are nonverbal, whether that's kids with chronic ear infections that are constantly stuck on antibiotics, or whether it's kids that are like ADHD kids that just can't calm down and get really frustrated because they can't be like all the rest of the kids, or they can't sit still like all the rest of the kids. I knew then that my calling wasn't to these 22 players on an NFL team that were continuing to destroy themselves. My calling was to these moms that were just looking for some non-pharmaceutical root cause approach for why their kids are struggling with ear infections, colic, latching issues, pooping issues, neurodevelopmental issues. And that's when I went headlong into, man, the science of chiropractic is so much bigger than I realized. The application of chiropractic is so much more um, technique heavy, or there's so much more of a mastery than I would have anticipated, especially, being around chiropractic, like it all kind of looked the same to me. And so from that moment on is when I really decided to dedicate my life to helping these parents that have kids with special needs, these parents that are looking to opt out of the typical medical system, where they don't want to be dependent on doctors to tell them what to do or when to do it. If they don't want to go the typical medical route, typically they get judged at their pediatrician office. And so I wanted to open up a place where they could come, be free to be the parents that they want to be, get support, get opinions from the other side of the medical, paradigm. And so that way they can be empowered to raise their kids and lead their families in a way that makes them feel confident and certain and independent, rather than unsure, fearful, and dependent on what somebody else knows.
You know, I apologize. Let's take a step back here for a minute. So, I was 12 and I visited a chiropractor myself, and they really did a miracle for my back.
Wow.
But let's say somebody out there is listening and they're in high school and
Okay.
they're 16 or 17 and they've heard that name before, chiropractor, but they're like, what in the heck does that even mean? So 101, what is a chiropractor?
Yeah, great question. A chiropractor is a marketer, a business owner, an entrepreneur, a clinician, a gosh, how many other things? A graphic designer, a interior designer. My favorite thing about being a chiropractor is it's never really boring because there's so many different hats that you can choose to wear. Most people would pigeonhole chiropractors as a doctor, a clinician, or a semi doctor, according to who you talk to. Focusing in on the clinician part of it, a chiropractor is somebody that analyzes the spine and looks for what we call a subluxation, which is poor movement in the spine, which affects the way the brain is able to interpret its environment. Um, not trying to get too neurological or scientific, but there's one word I want you to remember. It's called proprioception. And every time your joints move, it gives your brain feedback about what's going on in your environment. When our joints get stuck, especially in the upper cervical spine, you get kind of cut off or interfered with your proprioceptive input to the brain. The brain loses awareness about its surroundings, which triggers what we call a fight or flight or stress response. Stress causes tight muscles. When tight muscles become chronic, that limits movement more, which starts to cause a systemic stress response. So you get more adrenaline, more cortisol, affected GI system, then you have inflamed immune system. And that's why chiropractors, have all the different, diseases and symptoms listed on their websites and their doors and whatnot. It's not that we treat disease, but chiropractors get to the root cause of disease. We say we treat dis-ease. We bring the body from a state of stress into a state of ease by analyzing for subluxation and then doing the adjustment, which provides movement into those joints. The movement restores proprioceptive or awareness feedback to the brain, which turns off the stress response and allows the body to go in that state of healing. The body was made to be a perfect self-healing, self-regulating, optimally performing organism. But when stress gets in the way, that's when the body starts to have to overcompensate. As an entrepreneur, you have to learn how to synthesize that message. So that's 8 years of school, and then plus my postgraduate work synthesized all into 2 minutes of a blurb that makes sense, that makes people want it. You have to become a marketer. You have to know what people want and how to deliver that to them. You have to be a clinician. You have to be an expert at your craft. You have to provide a space that people actually like to be in. Um, so many different facets of chiropractic. And then as a clinician, you can be a sports chiropractor, pediatric chiropractor, orthopedic, neurologic, geriatric, pediatric, sports therapy. There's so many different niches or niches, or whatever that you can get into as a chiropractor. It's really unlimited. You can become a chiropractor, become a CEO, and launch other chiropractic offices. You can be a real estate mogul if you want to just buy a bunch of office spaces, kind of like McDonald's, and have other people be the clinician. I mean, there's so many different directions that you can take chiropractic depending on what your passions are. As long as you're a go-getter, as long as you're relatively smart, and as long as you're willing to put in the work to be a master at your not only your craft with your hands, but with your mouth too, with your communication.
So, Dr. Bowman, this is probably going to be a tough question because you don't sound passionate at all, if you from my sarcasm. But what do you love about your job? It seems like everything. Just hearing you talk, you kind of light up with excitement. But what are you passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the year that you ask me. When I was early in practice, I was passionate about helping and seeing as many people as possible. Any person that had a spine come in, I can help you. Now I'm more passionate about building a team and equipping and mentoring other chiropractors. Because honestly, when you're in school, you don't get taught how to run a business. You don't get taught a lot of the nuances of what it takes to become a successful chiropractor. Essentially, that diploma and state board approval means that you're safe and probably not going to hurt anybody. It doesn't mean that you are going to be successful. It doesn't mean that you have what it takes to actually, run as a successful practice and deliver great results. And so I'm passionate about kind of condensing everything that I've learned, fast tracking chiropractors to success, and hopefully sending them out to then be successful chiropractors on their own in the niche that they love doing, teaching them business sense so they don't fail. I mean, we were up 30% in California, which we were locked down for the majority of the year. Up 30% during COVID year, and even more this year. Yeah, I'm constantly changing business models. I'm constantly leveraging different marketing techniques. I mean, it's so much to think about. It's almost like when you start learning how to drive, and you get your driver's license, that by no means certifies you to go drive on your own safely. It just means that you should know what you're doing at this point. Um, and then you throw in a stick shift, and then you throw in driving in the UK on the opposite side of the road. Like, it just all becomes overwhelming. And so my goal is to help chiropractors really synthesize down what's most important, which I think is developing your craft. So giving them a space to really learn how to adjust and fast track that, and then learn the business savvy, and then learn how to think like a CEO and a business owner rather than just a clinician. But I mean, aside from that, I love chiropractic as well. I mean, we have stories daily. Two of them just recently. Um, she got hurt at work. She's a therapist for special needs kids. Some weird freak accident where a kid pushed her elbow kind of like weirdly jammed up into her rib cage, jacked up her rib cage, her shoulder, had to quit her job, and for 3 years she couldn't work, couldn't use her shoulder, saw all sorts of medical, saw all sorts of different types of chiropractors and whatnot. And it wasn't until she came into our office that now she's driving again. She's looking to work again. She's able to lift her kids. She's able to actually engage in life. Another gal, I can't remember how she got hurt, but her back pain was so bad that she had to quit her job, running out of money, and she came in just a month and a half of care, and she's working again. And we take these stories for granted, because if a medical doctor did something like that quickly without side effects, I mean, it would be like the Nobel Peace Prize. But two stories like that, just the last couple of weeks in a chiropractor's office, and we're like, yeah, and so it's cool just to be able to sit back at the end of the day, at the end of the month, and just look at these lives and these stories that had we not intervened, could have been a very different lifestyle. They could have been locked out of a world that they were meant to be a part of.
So great. And with that said, there's always challenges to any job. I don't care what you do or how glamorous when you come on the show, how things sound. We have a lot of great careers on our career podcast, people that light up, but obviously there's challenges. What are some of those that people should be aware of?
Yeah, great question. So being a little bit vulnerable here, in 2019, I I don't know. I put the cart before the horse, I suppose you should say, or the horse before the cart, however that phrase is supposed to go. I bought a really expensive Genius marketing system that was supposed to be amazing, bring in a whole bunch of new patients. Kind of went outside my niche. I started advertising to every neck pain, back pain, every single person that I could see that wanted to come in. I hired an associate before I needed them, and the marketing program turned out to be more expensive than I thought it would, nearly bankrupt me. I was down to my last $300 on my checking account. Had to let go of pretty much all of my staff. Didn't know how I was going to make payroll, make rent. The next month. I was about to apply for a $30,000 business loan just to float me through the holidays until usually January, February. Things pick up naturally as people kind of start to get back into routines, New Year's resolutions, and that sort of thing. Um, and I was at a seminar, and um, the guy up there was I'm just I luckily I'd already paid for the seminar, else I wouldn't have gone. And he was bringing up all these people that were talking about how great of a year they had, and I'm just sitting there kind of like, I wouldn't say disgusted, but just like good for you. Like, I'm proud that you're doing this. Like, I was ready to give it up. Like, I didn't want to own the business anymore. I wanted to just be an associate, clock in, clock out, make six figures, and not have to worry about anything else. Um, and he started to remind me of why I got into chiropractic in the first place. It wasn't for having a big practice. It wasn't for having a padded bank account. It wasn't for myself. It was ultimately to come here to be a servant, to people, to families, to people that were just looking to survive, looking to get beyond, a major health crisis. And it gave me a perspective shift of all I was doing. My patients started to become, stat numbers. My adjustments started to represent dollars rather than lives changed. And I decided that next week after the seminar, I'm done worrying about where my next dollar is going to come from, and I'm just going to care, more than I ever have about the people that I have right now. And week went by, and we were able to make rent. Another week went by, we were able to make payroll, and about a month and a half of just like having just enough happened, and then all of a sudden we just exploded. This was right before COVID, and so we were finally making some money again. I was able to start putting a little bit away, and then COVID happened. And I'm like, okay, right when I start to get my feet, out from underneath me. And so we never shut down. We went down to maybe 3 or 4 days a week. Um, but that's when I really started, or that's when I was really able to amplify why I was doing what I was doing. I started dropping tabs at various coffee shops and restaurants, some of my local businesses that have been supporting me, in the with the mindset of abundance, where the more I give to them, the more that value is going to start coming back to me. And my practice skyrocketed. I went from seeing maybe 200 people a week, 180 people a week, to well over 350, 375 people a week. Had to hire another associate, bring back some staff members, and ever since then we've been just rolling. And so some of the challenges with practice, especially, as a chiropractor, maybe with every entrepreneur, but is this desire to go after the new shiny thing all the time. This new click funnel, this new marketing scheme, this new blah 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 blah. And it's tempting to go outside of your comfort zone or outside of your core values to chase money. And that's what I did. I went outside of my core values. I did things that weren't unethical by any means, but just weren't me. It wasn't. I was being incongruent to who I was and what it made me successful. Also, during that COVID year, I couldn't market the way I used to market. I used to do wellness workshops. It's talking about things like how to heal from autism, how to heal from gut brain dysfunction, whether it's autoimmune or emotional disorders. Live workshops stopped. And so I started leveraging local influencers. They would come in, they would get adjusted, they'd share about how awesome we were. And I was able to make about $30,000 from one influencer sharing about who I was and what we did in our practice. And so things are always changing. There's always temptations to go outside of your core values, and marketing is more expensive. I used to be able to spend a couple $100 on social and get some pretty decent leads. And now it's, you don't spend less than 1,000 without getting, a decent turnaround. So that's some of the challenges. You always kind of have to be thinking ahead of the game. You can't just um, get a bunch of new patients and then just think that it's going to be it forever. You can't just hang your shingle. Now you're put your name on your door and expect people to come in. Like, you have to be active, and you have to develop a reputation. You have to um, develop brand equity. There's so many things that you have to do to establish a practice that's trustworthy and a pillar in the community.
Now, Dr. Bowman, you've got a lot going on behind the scenes. I know you've been doing a lot of different projects and different things. Can you tell us a little bit about them, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so my practice Instagram handle is at Trailhead Chiro. Facebook is the same. My website's trailheadchiropractic.com. If you're looking for a chiropractor in your area that thinks like me and practices like me, I'd be more than happy to find someone in your area. Obviously, if you're near me, then you're more than welcome to come in. We have had people fly out from Australia, come out from LA, come out from the East Coast, because what we do is different in the office. I have my own personal account. It's at Dr. Chris Boman, DrChrisBoman. And there you're going to see things like my book that's coming out in February 16th. It's called Perspective: Rewire Your Brain for Success and Abundance. And we talk about kind of the principles of chiropractic, applying that holistic root cause lifestyle to life and to business practices. So it combines everything that I've learned as a clinician, as an entrepreneur, as a regenerative farmer, and put it in there so that way people, whether they're trying to start their own business selling essential oils, organize their life as a family, or simply get healthier to stop living in a state of stress, it's all there to help them. And then I'm also I call myself a holistic small business strategist. So I practice just the same as I do as a chiropractor. We try to get to the root cause of service professionals' business problems, and it's usually just because you're thinking like a service professional rather than like a business owner. And so I look at systems, I look at marketing, I look at all the reasons why you might not be as successful as you want to be, and develop a vision, a purpose, goals, and then a plan of attack. So that way we can get you to where you want to go.
Awesome. And do you have a website where people could visit?
That's still kind of going. I kind of use Instagram as my main website right now. It's called the Glitch Doctor. That's kind of what the strategist is. So that's still being built.
Okay, one more time. What was the Instagram?
At Dr. Chris Bowman.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Dr. Bowman. So we have a lot of questions that have come in, which is good. So we'll have to do a lightning round here a little
Okay.
bit. So the first question that came in to us was, how long do you have to go to school to be a chiropractor?
Yep. So when I was going, I'm not sure how it is now, but I only needed I think it's 90 credits of prereqs to get into chiropractic school. So you don't necessarily need a 4-year degree. Now some states do require that you have your bachelor's in order to practice. So look at if the state that you want to practice in. The quick way would be just getting your 90 prereq units and then jumping into chiropractic school. I was able to do my bachelor's in 3.5 years. It's in my book if you want to read that story, Hal. But I was taking 21 and 22 credits a semester, and then chiropractic school. Once again, there's an accelerated version of 3.25 years, or you can do it in a typical 4 years. So the whole year thing should take you about 8 years, including like your internship and whatnot at the end. Chiropractic school is kind of like 2.5 years of heavy book work and boards, and then the last year and a half is all like your residency, so to speak, where you're in student clinic and you're in we call it preceptorship, so private practices.
Thank you. And the next question says, Dr. Bowman, thank you so much for joining. You talk a lot about being a mentor. How do mentors like yourself advertise mentorship?
Great question. I started locally. So I would go to, any networking meetups. There's a couple in my area where I just go and I answer questions and I help as many people as possible. And then I share what I did with them on social media, so that way people that aren't local are able to get that same experience. Doing stuff like this, I think Zach and I connected through a free Oh, and I guess it's not technically free, but a directory called podcast guests. There's plenty of sites and things like that. You can search like hashtag mentorship, or just use that hashtag. And so if people are looking for mentors, you can get it out there. A kind of a hack on Instagram. Instead of using your name as your title, you can, like, if you look at mine, it's small business strategist. You can put, lifestyle mentor, business mentor, and then people that are looking for a mentor will be able to find your profile as well.
Gotcha. Next question says, how competitive is getting into chiropractic school?
Not at all. When I was going into it, it's very low competitive. The hard thing is getting out. I
Mhm.
sat for orientation, and the teachers up there were like, "Look to your left, look to your right." Chances are one of the people sitting next to you is not going to be with you to graduation, and so they had those people like stand aside, and he said, "Look to your left, look to your right." Chances are 1 in 4 of you are never going to pass boards, and they said, "Look to your left, look to your right." Chances are after 5 years only one of you or five of you are still going to be in practice. And so it's not necessarily getting into school that's hard. It's passing school because it's hard. And then taking your boards. There's 4 parts of boards that you got to pass. And then making it in practice is a whole nother story. And I can say that's true in my experience. We started with about 120 students in my class. I graduated with about 40, and I would say 30 of them passed boards the first time. I can count on one hand how many classmates that I know that are still practicing. Some of them are sales reps, some of them are doing, other things than chiropractic. But not to discourage you, because it's an amazing profession. But it's not hard getting in. It's hard getting out.
Thank you. And we got time for one more question. Looks like I'm going to try to simplify this down a little bit, but basically, they have children who thinks they could benefit from a chiropractor, but is there a certain age where it's too young for somebody to visit a chiropractor, a baby?
Uh, no, no. I adjusted my kid. Basically, we had our birth at home. Second baby got dried up and detached. I adjusted. So within about 15 to 30 minutes, I adjusted my kids. If you want to search for somebody that's more qualified in kids, there's a website called ICPA, the number 4 kids, and that's the directory of people, chiropractors that have gone through more schooling to see kids.
Well, Dr. Bowman, I really appreciate your time. We had a lot of good questions come in, guys. Sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but we really do appreciate you listening out there, and just keep the questions coming. Dr. Bowman, you've been great. I know you're really busy, obviously running a full-time practice. You've been a great guest. Thank you for coming on and doing this edition of the Career Library. I think we've all kind of learned a lot from it, and I definitely learned a lot more than I thought I did know. So thank you again for giving back your time.
Yeah, of course. Any of you that have questions that didn't get answered, just shoot me a message, or if you can email them over to me, and I'd be more than happy to get back to them.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Bowman. And guys, thank you guys so much for listening. Until then, this is the Zach Ballinger Show.